Speaking of, Scott Hounsell has a piece out today. Are we done being glad Trump isn't president anymore? And he said what I had been thinking this whole time. He goes through kind of all of the things that are going wrong, and then he says, was it worth it? Are you happy and satisfied with what you've done? Are we done being glad that Trump isn't president anymore? And I want to call people I know and ask them that question. I'm tempted. Every day when I drive into work, I think of people I know who wanted this guy to be president so bad. And I want to call them up and go, how's it going? Are you happy? Look what you've done. But I don't. Speaking of Scott Hounsell, thank you for joining us, sir. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
All right, Scott, you have so many great pieces out, but the one we really have to focus in on, and I really want to break this down for the audience because it was very confusing for me. I didn't know all the players involved in this. Your piece is titled, Dr. Fauci's Testimony to Rand Paul on Gain-of-Function Research Certainly Seems Like It Was Untrue. Now, before we get going, Scott, I do want to play a little bit of this back and forth between Fauci and Rand Paul. So let's go to cut 27 here.
I fully agree that you should investigate where the virus came from. But again, we have not funded gain-of-function research on this virus in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, no matter how many times you say it,
there was research. There was research done with Dr. Shi and Dr. Barrick. They have collaborated on gain-of-function research where they enhanced the SARS virus to infect human airway cells, and they did it by merging a new spike protein on it. That is gain-of-function. That was joint research between the Wuhan Institute and Dr. Barrick. You can't deny it.
Scott, first let's break down what is gain of function for people who have never heard this term before.
To be as basic as I can with it, it is weaponizing viruses. It is altering viruses so that they display proteins from two different organisms. In this particular case, we're talking about like SARS or is bats and humans. And as a result, it can infect both. And much of the time that when they use this gain-of-function research, they can make them more transmissible and more deadly than the basic virus that existed previously.
Now, there's a few key players in your article that I know that Dr. Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul as well, that he brought up yesterday, but I think sometimes we hear names and we just kind of move past them. Let's go over Dr. Barrick and Dr. Shi Zhengli. Who are these people and why are they important in this?
Dr. Barrick is a virologist and epidemiologist here in the United States. He studies out of the University of North Carolina and has been doing so for years and has been conducting gain-of-function research, NIH-funded gain-of-function research at the university since at least 2014. In addition, he has been able to create what was described as SARS 2.0, or a second SARS virus that was more deadly and more transmissible, and it was immune to vaccines as well, that he developed in 2015 in conjunction with Dr. Shi Zhengli, who is the director of the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Now, what Dr. Fauci is trying to say is that the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, did not fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan. But what you're saying is this doctor from the Wuhan Institute, she was working very closely with Dr. Barrick, and by all of the accounts that you have here, which is, a lot of different documents, it would seem that they were very open about their relationship.
Not only were they conducting these studies regarding gain-of-function research and the study of SARS, MERS, and influenza type viruses, they published these studies and these findings, and these studies and findings were found on the NIH's website. So this is not just the fact that NIH funded or any of the rest of it. Obviously, this is what we're saying, that this occurred. But obviously, not only did they do this, the NIH was aware of it because they published the studies.
Right. And would you say that what Rand Paul said about Dr. Fauci parsing his words, it did seem like that because he kept saying not in Wuhan. And then you bring up that he said the WIV is not now receiving money from NIH. But it seems like it's a lot of semantics and that Dr. Fauci is trying to avoid what is probably going to be a big issue for him.
The point is that whether or not the NIH funded this gain-of-function research is indisputable. You can look at it from two different angles. Either Dr. Barrick, who's given a $10 million grant from the NIH to study SARS viruses and conduct this gain-of-function research, shared that research with Dr. Xinzheng Li of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Absolutely, unequivocally, they have worked together on that research. But aside from that, another group was able to give a direct grant to the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Is that the Eco Alliance?
EcoHealth Alliance gave them, or it was kind of a subcontractor, if you will, to EcoHealth Alliance, and it was specifically to study how coronaviruses in bats in China and how they infect people. In other words, reverse engineering the genomic code of SARS, and in doing so, it's literally gain-of-function research. So either it was funded through Dr. Barrick or is funded through EcoHealth Alliance, or both, but it is indisputable that the NIH-funded research ended up through the Wuhan Institute of Virology at some point over the last 5 to 7 years.
You also write, it has been reported that Fauci ordered the resumption of funding without consulting the White House or, by extension, the HHS, which is required under the gain-of-function research guidelines. Can you go into that a little bit?
So the HHS has a board that specifically deals with any research that could make dangerous pathogens more contagious. And that's a direct quote from the HHS. And as a result, any funding, any research must be approved by them. Fauci neither approved the gain-of-function research that was done done by Dr. Barrick. He did not approve the gain-of-funding research that was done through EcoHealth Alliance. And as a result, any of the research that was conducted at the Wuhan Institute of Virology also wasn't within the guidelines of the HHS. So there's so many things here that Fauci himself, in fact, Fauci should have, as soon as these grants were promoted or were accepted by these labs, Fauci himself should have sent it for review to the HHS board. He did not. So, I mean, Fauci himself is tied into this. It's not just a sin of omission, oops, I forgot, or oops, I didn't know. He was specifically instructed to report back to this HHS board regarding this type of research and did not.
Now, you mentioned something else here, Scott, that I find very interesting. You said, furthermore, Politico reported that U.S. diplomats in China had been sending warnings to State Department bureaucrats. What were they sending warnings about since 2017?
Warnings about specifically the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And to quote it, it says a serious shortage of appropriately trained technicians and investigators needed to safely operate this high containment laboratory. In other words, they were saying, look, there's stuff going on at this lab that is not only dangerous, but it's risk of getting out because they don't have the appropriately trained staff. In addition, the State Department issued a release just this last year that stated that they're aware of the fact that gain-of-function research was conducted at this lab since at least 2017. So we know that gain-of-function research was being conducted. The U.S. State Department knew it was. They knew it was dangerous. They knew that there was a problem with safety, and yet they still did nothing. Granted, this occurred under the Trump administration, so this is since 2017. So this is a slam against the government in general, not any one particular administration. This has been going on for a decade.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to ask you just about this as a whole is that there was talks of this kind of situation a while ago. I remember Senator Tom Cotton was kind of drilling down on how this started, where it originated from. And he was really poo-pooed by the media as being a conspiracy theorist. I kept seeing the word debunked. His theory had been debunked over and over again. But based off what you're writing, not only does this have a basis and should be investigated, but it really does seem like there could have been some shadiness happening here.
Specifically with the debunking, and this is, I use air quotes around this, is the fact that who debunked it? The Chinese government and the WHO, who, by the way, the WHO is on the Chinese government's dime. So, of course, the WHO is going to respond what the Chinese government, one, provides to it, and two, tells it to. So this idea that there's no chance this virus came out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology is, in a lot of ways, just a complete denial of fact and the reasonable assessment of the facts. That aside, there are certain markers of the SARS-CoV-2 virus that make it, basically put it into stealth mode into our system. Our cells have particular code markers in it so that our white blood cells, our immune system, don't attack our healthy cells. The SARS-CoV-2 virus has some of these markers in its RNA code. And I covered this over at RedState in the RedState VIP. It's behind the paywall, so if anyone's interested, that's fine. But there's a lot of research showing that this was genetically altered in some way, and that it ended up being released, probably accidentally, but it came out of this lab. Here is again the research showing that the WIV, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, received funding from the NIH to study this very situation. These studies were done in collaboration with NIH-funded studies here in the United States. To say that this didn't occur is an absolute misrepresentation of the facts.
Yeah, it seems very coincidental, all of this information. It seems a bit too coincidental. Scott Hounsell, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people follow you on Twitter so they can see tweets about Governor Hair Gel and other great stuff like your piece here from RedState?
You can follow me on Twitter at Hounsell, and you can always find me at redstate.com. We've got a lot of great writers over there and a lot of great content. We'd really be glad to have you all over to read.
I'm a huge fan of RedState. Everybody knows that. Every day I come into work, I go to RedState. I print off a ton of articles. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.